Hello and welcome to Ear to the Ground. Coming up for you on the programme, Dara is in Meath finding out why farmers are falling out of love with willow.
There isn't enough money in it to make it attractive to farmers.
Helen is in Limerick meeting a dairy farmer trying to get the balance right.
Did you feel a pressure to do what other dairy farmers were doing?
Oh yeah, like even today I still feel that.
And I'll be in Clare, where trees are being planted to help restore Ireland's native woodlands.
This would have been the natural vegetation of much of the west of Ireland. I think they're part of our cultural heritage and something we really need to look after.
For years, farmers have been encouraged to grow renewable energy crops like willow. Grants and subsidy schemes were rolled out by successive governments, but with mixed results. For some, it developed into a thriving business, but for many, it was yet another example of a farm diversification project that simply failed to deliver. John Keeley was among the first farmers in the country to plant willow under the state's support scheme for renewable heat, which was set up in 2008. Mainly a sheep and beef farmer, John planted 9 acres of his land here in Dundee in County Meath.
Willow to me seemed the best option. Like it's a very easy crop to grow. If you grow it on good arable land, it'll yield very well. It's a crop that has almost no cost once you establish it or work. And that's one of the great attractions to it.
Farmers were given grants to grow willow with the prospect of 2 market outlets, supplying biomass to power stations and wood chip to private commercial enterprises.
The idea was that there would be many different outlets for it. I suppose at that time there was great optimism. It was just before the boom when this all kicked off. And there was hotels being built all over the place. And it made so much sense, and it still makes sense.
However, the expected demand from the private sector never materialised, leaving growers with only one substantial buyer for their willow, the Bordnamona power plant in Edenderry. And that affected the price that farmers could achieve.
I looked at the price of electricity per unit back in 08, and it was about 12 cents, and now it's nearly 48. But we've had little to no price increase in what we get for willow. So the price we get for willow harvested and delivered is about €25 a tonne. There isn't enough money in it to make it attractive to farmers.
So once John has harvested his 3 remaining acres of willow, he's going to return the land to grass for his animals. But about 30 minutes away, another farmer is looking to expand his already large plantation. Niall McGrath currently grows 200 acres of willow and manages a further 900 acres near Garristown in North County Dublin. He believes that many farmers who planted willow took the wrong approach, and that in turn led to problems, not least when it came to harvesting the crop.
The idea at the time was probably based on giving farmers something to maybe plant in the worst part of the farm, unproductive land, stick it in, walk away. It doesn't work that way. It's a crop. You have to look after it. Contractor men out there, they'll sink in the winter, they can't get a lorry in, the tractors are getting buried.
So you're not surprised that there's so many fellas pulling willow out now?
No.
Rather than being given a one-off grant to encourage the growing of willow, Niall would like to see farmers being paid a yearly subsidy until harvest, as happens in the forestry sector.
This takes time to get to 10 tonne per acre per year. That helps that cash flow, and it will give the end user something bankable that the crop is going to be there for the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Do you understand how there'll be farmers out there watching this? You know, their faith in renewable energy and the schemes and the ideas is broken.
They're 100% right. The last time they were told, grow it and they will come. Did they show up? No. Would you blame them? No. Why? Because gas is cheap. Now the farmer is in the power, he's in control. If he wishes to look at growing willow, there's end users out there now crying for chip. They're looking for the stuff, can't be got.
Since 2019, another large-scale purchaser of willow has entered the market here.
Willow Worm in Kells in County Meath manufactures biomass briquettes. CEO Alan Fox has seen product demand grow as households and businesses across Europe look for renewable green energy alternatives.
So we've seen the willow being harvested and we've seen it being tipped out, and I can feel the floor moving underneath me here. What's the next stage?
This is the part of the process where we unload the willow onto this moving floor system, which is the first step in feeding the material to our dryer. We've spent the last 12 months ramping up at a rate of maybe 2,500, 3,000 tonnes extra every month, which will see us producing 40,000 tonnes of wood briquettes this year. And the further plans for this facility is to also produce a similar amount of pellet product, which will start next year.
As well as buying in willow, the company has its own plantations amounting to 2,500 acres.
Willow would account for between 40 and 60% of the raw material in our briquette. We blend our willow together with other carbon-neutral biomass products, but our plan for the future is to further extend our existing willow plantations, and we have a target to plant another 500 to 1,000 acres per year for the next 10 years.
Estimates suggest that there could be enough biomass resource from forests and organic waste here in Ireland to supply about 30% of our current energy needs. So, with energy security becoming an ever greater issue, why haven't more biomass plants been established?
There's been thousands of acres of willow have been planted over the years, but there's only 2 outlets for it, Eden Derry or here.
Why others will or won't do might have a lot to do with that this is not a cheap or a quick fix. This is a very, very strategic investment, and it requires a view to the future. And if we just look at where we are right now with Russia and Ukraine, when better? We've a lot of land here that's not being utilised, and farmers are being told you've got to change the way you think about farming for the future and have more environmentally friendly enterprises. Well, I hope that willow will, in time, prove itself. For us, we're confident and we're investing in it.
Coming up after the break, protecting native woodland along the Wild Atlantic Way.
It's actually not even ambitious. It's the opposite of ambitious. It's not enough.
And lessons in life for one Limerick farmer.
We're here for such a short time, like, and you really need to enjoy what you do. Like.
Irish farming is under considerable pressure to clean up its act when it comes to protecting the environment, and none more so than dairy farmers. But is it possible to farm sustainably and make the most of your farm's earning potential? Well, the farmer on this farm in Cappamore in County Limerick says that it is.
Gearóid Maher has been running this 73-hectare farm for over 10 years and today milks 80 cows here. The way he farms has been shaped not only by the land he works, but also by his own family experience.
My father would have got ill health there in the early 90s. He got brucellosis from the cows, and his health kind of deteriorated, and in the mid-90s he kind of had to retire from dairying.
What age was he when he got brucellosis?
He was 35,
God,
so his farming career was kind of cut short.
By 1998, Gearóid's father Michael could no longer manage the farm. Reluctantly, he sold all the cattle and rented out the land.
When you were 12, all the animals on the farm just were gone, disappeared.
That was hard, like, because it's kind of what you knew growing up, and then it's an identity more so than an occupation. It's who you are as a family.
Yeah. That must have been very hard for your father to be forced out of it.
You could see it. Like he wasn't the same man he used to be. Like.
Just 2 years later, the family was struck another blow with the death of Gearóid's mother.
It was like as if a light switch went out in the house. We weren't living in a home anymore. We were just living in a house. The warmth had gone out of it,
Having had such a bad experience with cows, including losing 2 herds to TB over the years, Gearod's father wasn't keen to see him go into farming. But it was all Gearod wanted to do. After studying ag science, he decided to re-establish a dairy farm here.
I had to go to the banks. There was no money here, and I remember finishing college and all I had was €200 in my my student bank account. And the only way I was going to get money is if I owned the land. So the father was quite happy to sign the farm over to me. So we got the solicitors to transfer the farm in 2011.
At that time, expansion was on every dairy farmer's mind. And between 2010 and 2020, cow numbers here increased by 46%. And despite pressure coming on in relation to emissions, those numbers continue to rise. But Gearod didn't want to put himself into massive debt. Instead, he chose to build his cow numbers slowly and only to the extent that the land could sustainably support.
I remember I could afford 40 cows, but then as I worked on soil fertility and things like that, I was able to grow the herd naturally. So I never really bought in stock to expand, because it was never my ethos to expand. It was always, if the farm grows a bit more grass, we'll keep a few more cows.
Did you feel a pressure to do what other dairy farmers were doing?
Oh yeah, and like even today, I still feel that there is a lot of pressure there. You know, it's almost like a competition now to be producing the most amount of meat. You know, to have the higher stocking rate and be growing X amount of grass. You know, I could never achieve that here.
Grass management is key in Gearod's system. He closely monitors grass cover and soil quality to ensure that he only uses what nutrients are needed and as little fertiliser as possible. Last year, he was able to reduce his nitrogen use by 25%. Gearod also keeps around 20 acres of hay meadow, grass that can be cut and dried for use as animal fodder.
Gearod, this is like stepping back in time. It's like a field from the 1970s. Why are you using a traditional hay meadow?
I suppose you could say it's backwards I'm going, but it all goes back to the type of cow that I have. The British Friesian type cow, she doesn't need any high quality forage for the winter while she's dry. Like it's poor quality silage, but for the type of cow I have, it's ideal for her because it'll maintain her body weight. It takes no management, it just grows itself. It doesn't get any chemical fertiliser. It gets maybe 1,500, 2,000 gallons of slurry. That's it.
This is a lot less work, and it's teeming with insects and butterflies, and it's alive, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And now more than ever, it's a cheaper way of feeding your animals in the winter.
Yeah, so this is a cheap feed because it didn't cost me anything. It's just a bit of slurry.
Alongside the hay meadow, Gearod has planted trees and hedgerows all around the farm. He doesn't cut the hedgerows and has almost totally eliminated the use of herbicide sprays.
I like what I do and I want to stay doing what I'm doing, and I don't particularly like all the negative press we get, but we're getting it because there's an issue there. And if we don't try and address it, it's always going to be there. Like, that's why I haven't sprayed. I haven't used a pesticide in about 2.5 years, and it takes a bit of getting used to.
Is it a mindset that we have to change then? Do people just have to get used to seeing,
whether
you call them weeds, whether you call them wildflowers, whatever you call them,
like
that they're there?
Like when you take nature or a farm, or you just leave it to nature, like nature isn't manicured. And I think a lot of farms have just gone too manicured, and there's a lot of time that takes to keep a farm like that. And I was like that here when I started first, because I thought, I need to be efficient, I need to be able to maximise my profits. But when I changed my practice a bit, I actually found that I was actually making as much money, if not more, because I wasn't paying a contractor to spray. I wasn't cutting hedges. So there's a lot less time involved with it, even though it's better for the environment. Like, what we call a weed has a biodiversity value. Like, and when I was spraying, I remember spraying a field, and the margin was full of thistles. And I just noticed when I was spraying it that it was just alive with butterflies. And I never seen as many butterflies in my life in this one area. And I said, sure, if I spray this, they're gone, like. And I just looked at it and I goes, sure, how much grass is that margin going to grow anyway for the cows? So it had no impact on the farm productivity.
Gearod obviously loves farming, but he's not consumed by it. Having gone through so much family trauma, he's clear in his own mind about what comes first.
We start early, we worked hard when we're working, and then once 6:30 comes, we we stop, and even if we're outside as drawing in bales or whatever, we'd never stay at it all night because, you know, life is short. Like, you know, you need to take time. You know, the farm will be here when I'm dead and gone, so you need to take time to yourself. You know, people often say, oh, a bit of land came up beside you, I had to buy it. But why would you, like? You're talking more debt, you'll have to milk more cows to service that debt. And then you're looking at a longer working day, and all for what? To milk 20 or 30 cows more that probably won't leave you any extra profit. Life is so short, like, you know, we're here for such a short time, like, and you really need to enjoy what you do, like.
I think we'd all be forgiven for assuming that the natural state of the Irish landscape is small green fields. Of course, it absolutely isn't, and it wasn't. It would have been a lot more like this. And there's a group based here in Clare who want to reshape the Irish landscape by recreating this woodland, what they call an Irish rainforest, all along the west coast.
Hometree is a registered charity set up to plant and restore native woodland. Cathal McMahon is a beef farmer outside Milltown, Malbay. He took part in one of their projects, the Eilon Farm Forest Alliance.
From your point of view, what did you get from Hometree?
So the guys provided all the trees, all native species. They planted them, and we also got a voucher for fencing. So we bought fencing and we put up ourselves. One of the areas was scrubland anyway, and we just thought we'd fill it up with the native woodland. And then at the other side it's quite wet, there's springs there, so we said we'd sow it there as a boundary between ourselves and our neighbours, and it might dry up the land as well around it.
Cathal showed me one of the sites where Hometree staff were checking and where needed replacing young trees.
So good. It's already got the windward side on it.
30,000 trees have been planted here so far. It's funded by the European Union and the Department of Agriculture, and farmers receive payments to plant trees on their land. Ray O'Fowlu works with the farmers involved.
So we worked with 12 farms in this catchment, and their farms all run down into the old woods, and we incentivised them to expand the old woodlands through shelter belts and other strategies. So yeah, in all we've probably put about 35 to 40 hectares into native woodland.
And I suppose the fundamental idea here is to connect the patches of woodlands together, because you get a real sort of boom in nature when they are connected.
Yeah, certainly from the charity's point of view, we'd love to see more of them on the landscape and see connectivity between them. The furthest west population actually of red squirrels in West Clare is just behind us here in Slieve Callan, and I love the idea that through connecting these pockets of woodlands up, we could bring them closer to the coast.
Hometree recently launched what they call the Wild Atlantic Rainforest Project. They want to restore and plant native trees on 4,000 acres from Donegal to Kerry. Farmers who get involved will be paid on a per acre of land basis. Ray took Cathal and I to a patch of native woodland in the Glendine Valley to show us a good example of what they want to develop.
Oh, it's a different world. I love that moment. You just pass under the edge of the canopy and it's always quieter. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Beautiful.
They're fascinating places, and really we're lucky to still have them, and our dream, our idea is to work with farmers to allow them to expand them.
So what is it about these wet woodlands that you think is so important?
These would have dominated our landscape. This would have been the natural vegetation of much of the west of Ireland. I think they're part of our cultural heritage and something we really need to look after.
After the last ice age 10,000 years ago, 80% of Ireland was covered from coast to coast in trees. But as humans colonised the country, they cleared the land for agriculture. By the 1600s, tree cover was down to less than 20%. Today, our ancient woodlands have all but disappeared.
How do you recreate this on pasture land? I mean, if you're thinking about Donegal to Kerry,
There's two ways you can go about it. One, you can facilitate natural regeneration. You can just exclude grazing animals, and these places will come back, there's no doubt about it. Some places, particularly up in the uplands, where there's no native trees or very few native trees left and limited seed source, I think judicious planting of trees where ecologically appropriate is probably the way to go.
The trees in this wood include hazel and sessile oak. Their canopy provides a moist, warm habitat for ferns, mosses and lichens to grow.
These are epiphytes. Epiphytes are plants like this polypody fern that grow on top of other plants like this sessile oak here. And they're able to do that because it's just so wet, so often it rains on so many days of the year here that it facilitates this.
It's not just a tree, you've got an awful lot of things going on here.
Yeah, when we talk about biodiversity, this is biodiversity. We often overlook it. There's so many different life forms just on this limb of one tree. And each one of those life forms is probably connected to multiple other life forms, rippling its way up through the system.
Creating and restoring native woodland on 4,000 acres will require a lot of young trees. At Hometree's headquarters in Ennistymon, CEO Matt Smith showed me their nursery with trees such as Scots pine, birch and alder.
30,000 trees in this tunnel.
Is there?
And they'll be kind of distributed on the kind of western seaboard, on the Atlantic Rainforest Project, and they've all been grown from seeds collected in different areas in the west, so they're ready to start populating. You know, we're told every single day about climate change and biodiversity loss. Like, this is a response to that. 20 million acres in Ireland. Our project's talking about 4,000. It's tiny. It's actually not even ambitious. It's the opposite of ambitious. It's not enough.
The Hometree team want to buy 2,000 acres of land, and they've already secured a farm in Galway. For the other 2,000 acres, they want to partner with landowners and farmers like Cahill. They say the project will cost €12 million, which they plan to obtain from a mix of public funds from the state, private donations and corporate and business partners.
We're not selling carbon credits with this project.
There's no offsetting.
There's no offsetting, but in the short term, you can really support nature restoration. So there is a lot to be gleaned from that if you're a smart business.
For thousands of years, humans have cleared trees to grow crops and raise livestock instead. This project looks to change that mindset.
A lot of the full-time farmers we've worked with on this project, their grandfathers potentially cleared some of these old woodlands. The idea of putting land back into a wild state is challenging for them. So I think you got to show them how and why and where the benefits are of doing it. And some of them can be in terms of stock management. Some of them can be in terms of regulatory compliance. I think there's going to be more and more pressure to ensure we have good water quality. Do a riparian woodland, store carbon, and ensure you're protecting your local river or lake. Yeah, there's benefits there.
10 months ago, Hometree began to plant young trees on Cahill's farm. The saplings might not look like much now, but this small wood gives a hint of what could be in store in the future.
It's interesting, isn't it, to think, like the area of wetland that you've planted, 100 years down the line, this is what it could look like.
Yeah.
Would you see that as...
I would see many benefits to it, yeah, I would. Yeah, especially in the region we're in. We're lucky enough to have rare species of birds and plants and wildlife, and this is all to support that. We'd be very happy if something like this happened, yeah.
That's it for the programme this week. Coming up for you next week on our Christmas show, Helen will be meeting a group donating culled venison to a food charity. 3 there, Ger.
2 beautiful big bucks, yeah. Very, very nice animals.
And they've spotted us. They're turning around to look at us now.
Yeah, they can see us, but they're safe distance, so they're happy.
Dara is in Mayo for the traditional gathering of the ewes for the ram.
How important is a dog on a job like this?
Oh, you're going nowhere without a dog. I mean, imagine coming up into thousands of acres and trying to bring sheep down without a dog. You wouldn't have a hope.
And I'll be meeting one of Ireland's biggest Christmas wreath makers in Wicklow. Conor, would you sell that? Don't forget that this programme will be repeated on Sunday at lunch after the farming weather. You can contact us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter, and you can hear more farming stories on Countrywide this Saturday morning on RTE Radio 1.
Now, we've all had the odd nightmare thinking about Jaws, but there's another shark-toothed menace about, and it being 75 feet long should give you an indication of what kind of a fight lies ahead from The Meg, tonight at 9:35 over on RTE2. Coming up next, EastEnders.